4, 3, 2, 1.
So listen, Leslie, Andrew, do you know Leslie, Andrew?
I know of Leslie. I don't believe we've ever met.
Haven't met. Hi.
But I know a lot of people who know you. And
Dodgy.
So Leslie, traditionally, so the Beauty Business Reset, Derek, Andrew, and I had started during COVID. It was supposed to be a 30-day project. We were going to do 30 straight nights of education and support for salons. We wound up having Nicholas French and Vivian McKinder, and just so much crazy. Gino obviously has been with us the whole time as well. And they wouldn't let us leave. It's like the mafia, like the head behind Derek's, they wouldn't let us stop doing the show. So I think we're up to about, this probably will be our 180th episode over the last.
This goes out to all the salons that
it does. So we have 27 or 28,000 employee-based salon owners that are in our groups. We help them with anything. And listen, we're fortunate that our network gets us to be introduced to people like you, so that not everything is always technical training or not everything is business training. We get to hear some fun, I would call them war stories, because you actually worked for Vidal.
Absolutely.
But we get to hear some stories. So I'm just going to introduce the episode. I need to see what number this is. This is
Leslie. Do you remember a guy by the name of Tommy Urdai?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Tommy Urdai was a financial backer, I think, for Sassoon.
Yeah, he was an MD for Vidal, and he was a good buddy of my dad's. And I met Tommy and the family. And Tommy founded Jimmy Choo with his daughter.
Did he?
Yes.
Wow.
Was he based in America or based? I know he was based here.
He came to America. He came to America and ran Sassoon's and then his daughter, and he founded that shoe company. They found a guy by the name of Jimmy Choo. What?
That's not bad, is it? Did pretty well.
Not bad at all.
From head to toe.
That's great. So I'm not going to stop anything because this is getting interesting right from the get-go. So guys, this is episode number 6, Beauty Business Reset for 2023. If you didn't hear before, we have the fantastic Leslie Cavendish with us, who listen, I'm a huge Beatles fan. I was a Beatles kid. My dad was a huge Beatles fan, but you've done so much outside of the Beatles that you could almost write a book about all the different musicians and famous people that you've worked with. I mean, when you go back, I know everybody, when you watch this episode, first of all, we'll put the links to get Leslie's book in the bottom, but look up some of the history of besides working directly for Vidal in the London salon at the beginning of everything going crazy. Man, you talk about bands. I went down and I'm like, who did he not work with?
I know.
I'm working possibly with, I made a very good friend of mine. We're moving up now to 2022. Somebody that read my book, I get an email from the Spaceman and the Demon. And anyone know who they are?
No.
Okay. So they're one of the biggest rock bands in the world, and they happen to be named Kiss.
Oh, well.
And so you have Gene Simmons as the Damned, and a lovely guy called Tommy Thayer, who is the lead guitarist and co-vocalist of Kiss. And they're all Beatle fans, Kiss. Every one of them loves the Beatles. And they got in touch with me. I met them this year, because we were nearly towards the end of it, to see their concert, the headliner concert up in the middle of England at Doddington Park. And I took them on a Beatles tour around London. And then we all had lunch. But the funniest thing is, if you look at Kiss, they've all got their makeup on. It's not as if, so when you see them, they haven't got their makeup on, so they had the freedom to walk around all these places, without, unless some diehard
Sure.
about.
Nobody knew who they were.
No one knows who they are. You go
I
out.
love that.
Yeah,
great.
it's wonderful. I was so sort of. We got the odd little. Is it him? Yeah. Oh, great. But anyway, that's that. But anyway, I was complimented on his hair, and if you look at he's actually got. He really has got his own hair, and so it could be a possible trim later in my life. I may add Kiss to the repertoire.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun.
Gene Simmons
phenomenal.
is a great entrepreneur, and he wrote a wonderful book that I'd recommend to all of our members to read. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he was, he's a true Ivrit, Israeli, and we speak a little bit of Ivrit together. And I didn't know him. I thought he was a guy from New York. He's born in Haifa. It's also incredible. Anyway, there you go.
So now you still do the Beatles tour throughout London, correct?
I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm going to actually, believe it or not, I'm actually on one tomorrow. Yeah, everyone's sort of, I take them around. I work for myself or with an events company that has some very highbrow clients, let's put it that way. And they arrange a beautiful chauffeur-driven car, and I meet them at their hotel, sort of have a meet and greet. And then just depending, normally 3 hours plus or 4 hours plus, we don't do Chelsea and whatever. And yeah, we have a nice time. So I don't do that often. And it's when I do it, I enjoy it, because if you keep doing it, it gets boring.
Well, guys, I think we should head over and get in the limo with Leslie and take the London tour. I've done the tour in Liverpool a couple times, and that's really, it's so exciting to learn where the songs originated, and how they got their ideas, and some of the things that you think would be so hard to do. It appears that Paul and John just sat down and penned it out and it was done. But I really enjoyed the Liverpool tour. I'm coming over, Leslie. We'll do something.
No, please. The Liverpool tour is great. I work with somebody up in Liverpool, although I'm in London. And what's amazing about the Liverpool, they really are the ground days, the sort of basement years. With the hard graft and the leather jackets and the greasy hair, coming back, playing these songs and meeting Brian Epstein, who was probably one of the chic. Brian Epstein reminds me of Adele Sassoon in a funny way, because the guy was immaculate. Sassoon always was immaculate. Beautiful ties, shirts, beautiful Dougie Hayward suits, beautiful shoes, cufflinks, beautiful cufflinks. The guy was terrific. Brian Epstein was a very similar guy. That soft voice, although his roots, Sassoon's roots, are the same as mine, from East London. Suddenly ended up with a very posh accent. But anyway.
So I love the fact, I don't own the book yet, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. And that's partially my fault, because I had originally asked, I said to Leslie, I said, hey, if I'm going to buy it, I want you to sign it. So we'll coordinate on that. And he will do signed copies as well for you guys. So you can message through and you can see those links that are going to come up in the bottom. One of the interesting things, what we know a bunch of people that have gone through Sassoon, whether it was London, Santa Monica, New York office, a bunch of fantastic hairdressers that all got the axe from Sassoon at one time or another. So would you mind just telling us the story? Because I thought that was absolutely hilarious of how of your initial I guess start with Sassoon to the Beatles. Yeah,
well, initial thing was, if you come to London, and if you bring your ladies or partners, they want to go down New Bond Street or Bond Street, you better have a few bob in your pocket, because it's one of the most loveliest streets in the world, beautiful jewelry shops, clothes shops. And at number 171 was Vidal Sassoon Salon, which was, it was floor to ceiling outside of glass, reception with beautiful lilies there. And I'd come from, I left school at 15, and I'd sort of picked my mum up from some little local, very nice little local salon, and then wandered off to Sassoon's, not knowing that I wanted to be a hairdresser, by the way. I had no idea. It's only because my best friend. Have you heard of Crimpers in London?
Sure.
Lawrence Falk.
Sure.
Yeah, but Lawrence Falk actually is still my best mate, and it was him that actually got me into hairdressing because he left school a little bit before me, and we were going to be footballers, but it didn't happen. So he's gone in to be a hairdresser in Baker Street, and I always wondered why. Actually, I don't know what you guys went into hairdressing for. You've probably got these artistic, fabulous ideas that you can do this. You know, I'm really honest. I went in and thought it was a great way of meeting women. That's really, you know, I'm being very honest about it because
I am too, Leslie, and I'm right there with you.
Oh, thank you.
I used to work for a bank in New Jersey, and I would walk from the bank to the pizza place for lunch. And between the bank and the pizza place was this incredible beauty school filled with girls. And I was like, I'm just going to go in there and meet them. And oddly enough, when I went in to meet them, the administrator asked me what my name was. And I said, my name is Gino. He said, nice to meet you. And then he turned around and he said, do you know, with a name like Gino, you could be a success in the beauty industry just with that name.
Absolutely. You know, you're made to be. Well, I wasn't. Leslie's not quite, Leslie actually is more of a woman's name. And it actually did help me out with Vidal's. But so I walked into that salon, and the only thing I could take to show that I could be a hairdresser, I had a wooden bowl that I made. That was a very crooked wooden bowl, shall I say. And I had it in a bag, and I met the manager who had a few shares at the time. I didn't know at the time. A guy called Mr. Gordon. I called everybody Mr. Sassoon, Mr. Gordon, Mr. Roger, Mr. Joshua, all these, you know, that's the name. Respect, that's what Vidal taught us in the beginning. And I always remember I went down, they had a private room downstairs, I think it was number 9. And it was like the Beatles songs come in number 9. But, you know, there was a private room where certain clients were allowed to, I don't know if they didn't pay to go in it, but certain stylists used that room. One particular guy called Warren Taffnell. Never come across a guy called Warren Taffnell. Warren Taffnell was very good looking, and all he wanted to do was chat up women the whole time. So he used to go down there. But anyway, there was no one using it. And Gordon sat down at that table in there and just said, why do you want to be a hairdresser? And I just said, oh, the way I got my wooden bowl out and put it on the table. I just said, the way I've shaped this wooden bowl is the way I can foresee myself shaping women's hair. And then he went, oh, really? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, thank you. We'll be in touch. And I remember walking out the salon thinking, what have you done? You know, what have you done? Anyway, 2 weeks later, they rang me up and said, his partner at the time, a personal partner, was a guy called Mr. Lawrence, who was a shareholder of Sassoon's, and he was a tinter, does the colouring artist. Now he was in partnership with Sassoon, and anyway, he told him what I did. He said, "You got to get the guy back." You know, he sounds all right. So that's exactly how I got into the hairdressing side there. But from that, I sort of I got no idea, but I'm seeing famous people on British TV, sort of with wet hair, with no makeup. And I'm walking through the salon, I'm shampooing people. I don't even know who they are. It's only till that lovely creative way later, about an hour later, these people become alive. And you suddenly see, oh my God, that's, you know, Shirley Bassey, fantastic singer, you know, or people doing Top of the Pops, Kathy McGowan. And it was just lovely to watch how it all created there. And then suddenly, you know, you become a junior. And then I think you would all know Roger Thompson.
Of course.
Yeah. So one of the things that Sassoon always said was, you know, just always show respect. Always remember the person, the client. They're always a client. No matter how familiar you get, how many jokes you tell, if you muck their hair up, show respect. And always remember that. And also as well, keep your mouth shut. Let the client talk. If you want to talk, that's fine. If you know, don't get too busy. Hence, moving on a little bit longer, Roger had a client called Jane Asher. And she doesn't have to walk in with a big sign on the forehead saying, my boyfriend's Paul McCartney. You know, we all know that. So I used to wash her hair, and that used to take about 45 minutes because she had very long strawberry blonde hair. And I used to blow dry it. And at the end, I used to go over to Roger and say, Mr. Roger, Jane's ready, and he's sort of come and nice to touch the thing. I've done everything, by the way. You know, I've done the hair drying, everything, and they come over, just touch the fringe, and then they just touch that, and they go, Leslie, the back mirror. And I go, and she'll say, thank you, Roger, you know, which was fine. So I got to know how that worked. I don't know. Have you ever, anybody ever worked with Roger or seen, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't the quickest. He was the slowest hairdresser. You ever met a slower hairdresser than him?
No, ever. And he didn't talk. Roger
He didn't talk. In fact, I love him. He had no personality. Right? He was just a man with a comb and scissors. And he you know, I always remember when he had a bit of money, he bought a car, and we were at the Grosvenor House, which was a very posh hotel, Sassoon at Grosvenor House, and you had an entrance at the back. And, you know, these beautiful Rolls Royce cars were coming, and Aston Martins, you know, you name them, lovely cars. And Roger had his car, and he had the most boring car in the world. When he came in, it was a horrible car with a horrible colour. But just sort of, anyway.
He was a lovely man, though.
Lovely man. Really nice guy.
Very nice person.
Yeah. So with that, being the slowest hairdresser you can imagine, I became a stylist. And he came in, the receptionist came in and said, Roger, can you do Jane's hair? She came in. It was for a comb out, basically. It wasn't for, you know, tint and everything. It was basically a wash and a blow dry. And he said, well, actually, I haven't got time. I'm running late. Oh, really, Roger? Do you think Leslie could do it? And the receptionist, by this time, I'm now a stylist. And I came over and I started doing her hair, and I knew exactly what to do. I got another junior to wash her hair, and I started going through the whole thing. 2, 3, 4 times later, you know, on 4 occasions, Roger said he was too busy. And she, on the 4th occasion, wasn't very happy. And the receptionist said, look, Roger, again, can't do her hair. Can you do it? So I said, yeah, no problem. So went to, it was on Saturday morning, 11:30 in the morning. And when she finished, she said, I showed her the back mirror as normal, I like it. And she said, what are you doing this afternoon? Which took me for a moment for why would you know what I want to do this afternoon? Although I was going to football. And I said, why is that, Jane? She said, have you got time to cut my boyfriend's hair? And I said, of course I've got time to cut your boyfriend's hair. And in my head, you know, I'm just thinking, my sister's got Paul McCartney's big photo in her bedroom. I'm a bit of a Beatles groupie anyway. And she's asking me. So I said, yeah. I said, that's fine. And she said, what time suits you? I said, in the afternoon. Okay. And I said, oh, by the way, Jane, can you tell me where you live? And she put a piece of paper and just went 7 Cavendish Avenue. And I said, Jane, that's my surname. And she went, well, maybe it was meant. And that's how I met Jane Asher and Paul McCartney. But today, to that day, I put Roger as the Pete Best of hairdressing. You know, it's the way it is. He wasn't very happy, by the way. We had a bit of a problem with that situation. Me cutting the Beatles hair. Roger put a lot of obstacles in my way, but we solved it in the end. That's
interesting. Now, do you still talk to Paul at all today?
No, there was a contact. Paul's often in the States. He's always traveling. I go through sometimes his office. I haven't actually seen him for about 7 years, 7, 8 years. I made a comment when he was married to Heather. Do you remember? This young lady who suddenly, I think she was trying to get him to be the one that she wanted to scream at when the Beatles were on stage. And suddenly he obviously was going grey, and she made him dye his hair. Well, I say she made him. Between them, they decided to dye his hair, and it looked red. If you look at those pictures there, his hair. So I got interviewed by somebody, and they said, well, you know, always, well, what do you think of Paul McCartney's hair? And I said, he looks like a London bus. And put that, and I said, you know, when you read my book, I won't tell you the very ending, but it will explain what I mean, because I said he's got, you know, he's got a great head of hair, and you know, why do that? why do that? Let his hair grow naturally, you know, and you know, it looks good grey, although it is now, if you've seen it. And then I'm very pleased that years later, he suddenly I started seeing he had a grey streak there, and then his hair was grey, and now he doesn't. I don't know if he touches it up, but his hair is natural.
That's great. That's awesome. Tell us about some of the other great bands that you work with too, Leslie, because the list is like crazy.
Well, I tell you the ones I liked being with, and you know, I do admit at the time of being a music groupie, I do like to see. I still today go to concerts. I like live music, and when I lived in Chelsea, the Beatles opened up a hairdresser salon for me in the King's Road, part of their Apple empire. So they, you know, besides doing records, they went into electronics, they went into films, they went into tailoring, and they went into hairdressing as the flagship, you know, although there wasn't going to be that many. Well, it could have been actually. And one of the guys that came up, who lived around the corner of me, I lived opposite the shop in Chelsea, was Barry Gibb. And I used to, when I went round to Paul and cut his hair, I used to take my book is dedicated to my rock and roll spaniel called Ernie. You know, that's definitely, it's there, right? And I used to have my dog with me. Well, the great thing about it, I used to go over when I cut Paul's hair, and he used to play around with Martha. So my dog was the biggest groupie of them all, hanging around with all these pop stars, rock and roll stars, dogs. And so Barnaby is Barry Gibb's dog. And if anyone's a Bee Gees fan, the song 1st of May is a song about Barnaby. It's his birthday. So Barry had the most fantastic head of hair, and he used to do his hair, and he used to sit there and play songs on his guitar. He used to sit there and used to, you know, like, when I used to go around there, I literally could walk from my place. It used to take me, 5 minutes, walk up to King's Road. And often, I say often, when I was asked, often these people wouldn't ring me up. It would always be, for the Beatles, it would be one of the people at Apple, like Neil Aspinall or Mal Evans, you know, people who look after these guys, would say, hi, Leslie, go around the Paul's hair as well. There was always someone at the Robert Stigwood organisation, the management of the Bee Gees, that would ring me up and say, oh, hi, Barry, can you pop over to Barry? And I remember popping over there one day with my dog and Richie Havens. Richie Havens, the guy that opened up Woodstock, if I remember rightly. And he was very good friends with the Beatles. So, yeah, he was a great guy. Very nice guy, very nice. And Morris, his brother, so did all the Bee Gees hair, even when they were 5. You had Colin Peterson on drums. You had Vince Maloney on lead guitar. Then you had Barry, Robin, and Morris.
They had beautiful haircuts, Leslie.
Except for Morris. I won't take Morris as a compliment.
Can you guys see this? This is me when I was trying to be Barry Gibb when I was cutting hair.
You're not far off. Were you?
That was when I had hair.
Yeah, he did. He had a great mop of hair. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he did. You know, other people. You know, so a lot of people at Apple, when I went up to the, you know, I had the salon. This was after I left Sassoons, by the way. Well, I did do a few people at Sassoons. I don't know. I tell this story when it's hairdressers in England or the UK, and they look at me like I'm mad. But I used to say to them, you know, I used to do these guys' hair, everybody, at 6 o'clock at night. They used to say, well, why do you do it? Why I had? Because men and women never had their hair done together. So, you know, when I'd finished during the salon hours, we used to book the clients for 6 o'clock for me. So I used to go do it. I used to do it upstairs in the tinting room. And that was before. And getting back to my friend Lawrence, who introduced me to hairdressing, he was the first person to open a unisex salon in London, and everyone copied it everywhere, called Crimpers. Crimpers in Baker Street, Crimpers in Hampstead, and Crimpers in Knightsbridge. And he would have women and men sitting together. Now, people take that as quite the norm today, but when I tell people that, you know, that never happened, they go, oh, really? You know, so Yeah, so anyway, one of the guys I used to do at the salon at Sassoon's in Grosvenor House was Keith Moon from The Who. So he turned up, and all these people, it's all to do with network and connections. I used to do the Brad Pitt of the day, and he's still alive. He's still a very good looking man, Terence Stamp. Terence Stamp, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Great actor.
Great actor. And if you look at him when he did a film called Billy Budd, you would see why he was, I say he's the Brad Pitt of the day, because he was voted the most handsome man. But I used to do his hair, and he was the coolest guy I ever met, because he used to turn up with a white t-shirt. See, I'm copying him, right? White t-shirt, a denim jacket, denim jeans, pair of cowboy boots, and a dark blue Rolls Royce outside, and unshaven sometimes. And you look at him, you go, "Oh man, I quite like that image." I used to say to myself. But his brother was a guy called Chris Stamp, and Chris Stamp was the manager or co-manager of The Who. And that's how that came about. So I got to do Terry, and I got to do Chris. And Chris said, none of these guys said to me, "Oh, I've got a rock band." But this particular guy, Chris, who I didn't know, but he's a very similar looking guy to his brother, said, "Oh, I said to him, 'What do you do?" And he said, I'm managing a band that we get, and we're doing it all. They're pretty good." And I literally, this is the truth, I literally said, "What's the name of the band?" He went, "The Who." And I went, "The Who what?" And he went, "No, the band's The Who." And I went, "Oh, the band's The Who. Okay." And it's all very well, people, you think about it now, The Who, but when the name's first thrown at you, you go, "Yeah, The Who. The Who." Okay. So we met loads of people through him, and then you meet lots of people at Apple in Savile Row, where Peter Asher, James' brother, was the A&R guy. So he would, I'd go up there. That's how I got to cut John Lennon's hair, and met George Harrison up there, loads of people. So
unbelievable. This is just incredible. This is remarkable. This is my favorite BBR so far ever in the world. I am shocked and amazed, and I can't even imagine if I had Paul McCartney sitting in my chair, or Keith Moon, or Peter Asher, or Jane Asher. I'd panic. I would just panic.
You wouldn't, because you're made to be a hairdresser. Your name tells you wouldn't panic.
How about Tony Curtis? How'd you?
That was great. That was amazing. That was 1968, shows you, and he did that for the name of the film, Boston Strangler, famous film, Boston Strangler, where he also good-looking guy, and he happened to be my mum's pin-up. My mum, she used to say, "Tony Curtis." All I used to hear, "Tony Curtis, Tony Curtis, Tony Curtis." Never in a million years. "All right, Mum, she's into Tony Curtis. My sister's into Paul McCartney, and I'm whatever, but she's into Tony Curtis." And I get a phone call from his manager and said, "Hi, I'm Mr. Tony Curtis." If he'd said Mr. Curtis, I'd never known who he was, So Tony Curtis' manager here. Mr. Curtis is staying at the Dorchester Hotel, the presidential suite, and he would love you to come over and meet for you to come and cut his hair. Because and I read, as soon as he said that, I remember seeing in the paper that he was coming over for the premiere of the Boston Strangler. So has anybody been to London, gone to the Dorchester Hotel?
Yeah,
it's like it is a pretty good hotel, isn't it? It's a beautiful hotel, isn't it?
Beautiful.
And I go there and go to reception, come to see Mr. Curtis. They make make an inquiry. Yeah, Mr. Curtis, go to the presidential floor. Go to this place up there, and I'll talk about going to nice places. I've never been to a presidential suite. And I think, what was it, 68? How old am I? 68. I'm 21 years old. And so I go in there, and you've got the beautiful views of London, and you've got the fruit there, and I could smell a smell that I was very familiar with. It's a lot of nice sort of how can we say, a weedy smell coming out. And he comes out, how are you? And I can't tell you, majority, I'm just trying to think, the majority of the people I met was so sort of, never any of them were like, now I'm Tony, or I'm the Beatles, or I'm this. No one ever sort of, played the Mr. Big Boy to me, which I found terrific. It really put me at ease. You talked about that, Gino, how would you face these people? If they're really not be showing yourself that they're the big star, they haven't got a big entourage around. It's not like today that if you had to go and see Beyonce or somebody, you would know you're going to see Beyonce. You have to get through 1 million people.
Right.
Beatles or these people, it wasn't like that. At the time, it wasn't like that. So yeah, he was amazing. And the great thing is, forget doing it. Oh, one of the things is I always wanted, this is like a dream, right? But dreams sometimes come true. And I always thought to myself, I've always wanted to cut 3 people's hair if I was going to be a really good barber. I started off a ladies hairdresser, but they sort of put me in the category as a barber. And I thought, well, who would you really like to cut? I'd like to cut the Beatles, get a tick there. And I'd like to cut Tony Curtis, because I grew up and I used to go into a hairdressing salon and say, can I have a DA? So, that was the first time that somebody's haircut was labeled. And the other one I really wanted to do, but it was going to be impossible. I thought it'd be very cool. I'd love to have been Jesus Christ's hairdresser. That people would say, do you know that guy who used to cut Jesus Christ's hair? I thought that would be amazing. But that was, I thought I'd just get the 3 together. So I've got 2, but the 3, yeah.
You'll have to wait for the 3rd one to come back sometime soon.
Well, waited. I've stood outside those gates in Jerusalem, man. And no one's turned up yet. That I can promise you.
That's great. But listen, it's even more interesting from my end, thinking about how that time in London when the Beatles came here and rock really became the thing, swinging London into the 60s, it really pushed forward the 70s and created pop culture as a term, right? So we throw pop culture around now, but there really wasn't anything from the movies that you watched to the music that you listened to the clothes that you wore to the hairstyles. They were sort of all in that 40s and 50s cookie cutter mentality. And it just really fueled everything that changed everything we do today. That's the reason why Beyonce can have an entourage of 100 people, is because now, they were musicians by trade that like to make music. Now it's an industry. I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, you talk about that, one of the major reasons is one of the biggest bloomers that Brian Epstein made, unintentionally, but it cost the Beatles $100 million plus. When the Beatles went to America and a lot of the early bands, merchandising was not part of the income. The income, what you do, sell a few LPs or sell a few T-shirts at a gig they were at. But it was only the Rolling Stones that really sold that, their merchandise, that realized how much money you can make. You can make more money in merchandise than you can in performing on something in the early days. And the Beatles missed out on that through a slip up with Brian Epstein. So there wasn't that, you needed an entourage around you, but they didn't. But today, the merchandise is a major part of any music.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
That's all the live events now. I mean, that's all turned around.
Yeah.
News, right? I mean, the live event, the touring is huge now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, a lot of people wondered why, when the Beatles went to America, especially Lennon, how he sort of his views changed, because he was a nice guy, with a sharp sort of sense of humor, when he was in, Liverpool, UK, Europe, wherever. And it wasn't until that tour of America in 63, 64, 65 even, is when he suddenly, his eyes were, going to America and saw things in a different way, whereas the others went along with, they're there to play music. That's not to say they weren't aware what was going on in the world. For instance, South Africa apartheid, I'm sure, we were aware of that, of any, when it comes to sport or anything. But the people like me and people that goes around, during a concert, would be cheering, screaming, whatever, and then they move on to another country and everyone will be doing the same thing. Kids, as from whatever age, but 16, 17, 18, or even, younger. The moment he goes to America, he realizes a lot of these 17, 18, 19-year-old guys or girls he was meeting in the rest of the world, in America, they're all coming back in body bags. He put on the TV and they suddenly see, hold on, there's body bags coming back from Vietnam. And that changed his whole thing. That's how he got into this questioning this war and peace and love. And that was really happened when he went to America, because I know that when these guys when they go out, they can only live in a hotel. They can't literally go out on the street and wander around, get to know a city. They travel all over America. I think in the early days, they saw every hotel room there ever was.
Sure.
So they're putting on TV. And, in England at the time, in 1963 or 4 and 5, we had 2 TV channels. We had ATV, it was called, and BBC. So, you just sort of watched what was on the news. In America, you had 1,000,001 channels. So that was exciting. So every news station would have a body bag come back. There'll be something about the Vietnam War. So suddenly you think, especially if you're songwriters or you're that type of person, it leaves an impact on you.
Well, Leslie, tell us about the Charles Manson story. Since we're talking about body bags here, hate to smile about it. But this is I found it really interesting.
I can't wait to read your book, and I can't wait to. I was so spellbound with the Charles Manson story. I can't wait to get the book and go through it.
Okay, so did anyone familiar? I'm sure you would be there. Jay Sebring.
Yes. Yeah.
I know the name. Yeah.
Okay. So I get a phone call downstairs on my hairdresser shop in the King's Road. Phone rings and it just says, "Oh, hi, are you Leslie Cavendish?" I said, "Yes." And I'm quite observant and hearing, so I could tell it's an American accent. And he said, "Hi," he said, "I'm going to introduce myself. My name's Jay Sebring, and I have hair salon in LA. And I do a lot of the music. I do the Beach Boys and I do Warren Beatty. And he's naming off all Frank Sinatra, Steve McQueen, all these, pretty impressive clientele." And he said, "And you do the similar thing." He said, "What I'd like to do, what I'm thinking of, I want to do products for men. I want to do hair products, I want to get men's products. No one ever done it really before." And I said, "Well, that sounds really good." He said, "Yes, I'm really interested. And what I'd like you to do, if we could work together, would you be interested?" So I thought, yes, I would be very interested. That's a nice idea. He said, "Well, I don't know what you're doing." He said, "Would you like to come over in the next week or two?" And I said, "I'd love to. I've just got something going on at the moment, but let me have your number and I think I'll be okay within a month. So can I call you and we can arrange this, me coming over?" "Yeah, not a problem, no problem." Just left it at that, then I'd pick up the paper about a week later. Now this would have coincided me being there, okay? And it says, Sharon Tate. Now Sharon Tate was someone's hair I used to wash at Sassoon's when I was about 15 or 16. She was a stunning looking woman, beautiful looking woman. And, she was married to Polanski, who was a good friend of Adele's. And I just saw Sharon Tate. And I thought, oh, what's that? Why has she got a name on the front of the newspapers? Sharon Tate stabbed to death, 8 months pregnant, with her ex-boyfriend hairdresser, Jay Sebring. I went, and with some other, I went, oh my God. I spoke to this guy about 2 weeks ago. And and I went, I don't believe this. This is really freaky. It's Syro Drive it was, and about the Manson. He didn't actually Manson, it was his followers that went in there. They also, as well, they kill the pigs written in their blood, which is part of what they thought was part of the Beatles song. That's what Manson used to think. And the craziest thing is, I could have been there. Okay, let's move it on. 5 years back, I go with my wife to go and see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a fantastic film. But I really didn't know what it's about. I just knew it was about, you know, the two guys there. One's a stunt man, one's doing the other. And it was a really good movie. And as the movie's moving on, I'm sitting on the, you know, watching the movie, and suddenly they end up going to Syro Drive. And in my head, I go, I've heard that name before, which is really weird. And they, in the film, are next door to Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring, who turns up on the screen being played by an actor. And I had a real shiver come down my spine.
I'll bet.
I went, oh my God, that could have been me. I could have been other. That's a very scary story, but never heard the name Jay Sebring before. I had a email from his cousin who's done a film all about his hairdressing. If you look up Jay Sebring, I did watch it. It's about an hour, and you know, it's a very interesting film about his life and all the people he met.
What was your favorite moment of the Magical Mystery Tour, Leslie?
Favorite moment of the Magical Mystery Tour was they'd finished filming. We're down in Atlantic at the Atlantic Hotel in Cornwall. They'd finished filming, and the guy was a rock and roll. He had a #1 hit, "Keep on Running," called Spencer Davis. And if you know that, great song, "Keep on Running." And Spencer Davis was a good friend of McCartney's, and he was down in Cornwall at the same time. And his uncle had a pub in a place just outside called Twyford. And he must have said something like to Paul, well, you know, if you ever, while you're down here, if you finish filming, why don't you come down to the pub? And during that course of the end of that day at the hotel, there happens to be Ringo and Paul, myself, Mal Evans, and this other lady who was one of the fan club secretaries. And how it came about, he just said, should we just go down to the pub to Spencer's uncle? So the five of us just went down there. So walked into this pub down in Cornwall, and all the fishermen and the local guys there are just, you know, drinking away their pints, you know, all that Cornish ale. And we must have gone in about 9:30 at night. And picture this, right? You're in a pub, you've got all your mates around you, you're all knocking back the beer, and someone comes through and look up. Is that Paul McCartney? No, it can't be Paul McCartney. He came in, and there was a piano there, and he came in, he sat down on the piano. There was a little mandolin with a one-string mandolin on the wall that Ringo picked up. And they were going, oh, you know, Spencer was going, that was my mate Paul McCartney here, you know, guys, you know, they were going, give us a Beatles song, Paul, give us a song, Paul. And he didn't. He just played an old Knees Up Mother Brown, you know, old-fashioned, real piano thudder. I was fascinated. You've got to picture this, right? This was not the norm of this, you know, I know what they were doing when they were filming, but this was, you know, no one had cameras, you've got to think of it. No one had iPhones, no one had a camera, no one, so it was all pretty safe. And it was quite amazing to watch these people. It was actually one of my very, very favorite parts of the Magic Mystery Tour. Yeah, I mean, those guys must be talking about it today if they're still alive, saying, you know what, McCartney came in here with Ringo.
Yeah, no doubt. Leslie, you have had such a wonderful, gifted life in hair, in beauty, and it's incredible to have the opportunity to get this out to everybody and get them to see what a 15-year-old junior hairdresser can become if you really, you know, work hard at it and give your all and, you know, stay tight. It's just remarkable. This is incredible. You're giving me chills as you're telling these stories. You really are.
I'll tell you a little thing is, you know, in hairdressing, you know, it is true what the Sassoon said, you know, the respect of the client, don't talk too much, let the client talk to you, get to know the client. You've got to remember, a hairdresser is the closest thing to a lover. You know, you've got the husband, or you got the lover. And who else is going to actually physically touch someone else at 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning? So you don't know the moods of these people, your clients. So be careful. I don't know whoever I'm talking to, but be careful. Just let the client get to know your client, get to see it, and you'll be surprised what listening and being discreet can get you, because it was the only way. I mean, I got offers for loads of, after a while when people used to know, I cut the Beatles' hair. That's because it was in the newspapers. I made Paul a skinhead. Because I got time to tell the story quickly?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, absolutely.
So, all the times I ever cut the Beatles' hair, not one of them ever said to me, I want the hair like this. When I first met McCartney, I did say to him, how do you want your hair? And he said, I'll leave it to you, which, as you know, as a hairdresser, is a fantastic thing for someone to say. And I cut his hair. I used to cut his hair in his bathroom. This was not at a salon. This was upstairs in his bedroom. And I used to go to his bathroom, and I used to, your toothbrush mug, I used to fill it with water, and that's the famous Paul McCartney's having his hair washed in the sink. Toothbrush mug, right? Had my hand dry, had my kit and everything. And I think on the second or third occasion, I said to him, I hadn't seen Jane for a while. And he said, no, she's filming. But this time, as well, it's all to do with timing. This was when they finished their last concert at Candlestick Park, which was late in August '66. And I'm talking about September '66, so a month after. So it must have been the very first time that the Beatles could be themselves, because he was unshaven. He didn't have to have a shirt and tie on or look like how Epstein wanted him to look, well, they've been doing for the last 4 years. And I just said to him, I haven't seen Jane for a while. He said, no, she's filming down in Bristol. I said, oh, lovely. Yeah, she's doing a film. I said, great. I said, you're going to go down and see her? He said, no, I can't do that, unfortunately, because when I go there, the press are all there, and the first thing they do is ask when are the Beatles getting back together again? Are you going to go on tour again? And it takes it away from Jane. This is all, I'm touching his hair, and I'm getting his hair wet, and I'm pushing his hair, right at the back. And I said, well, I suppose when she's finished, you'll be able to go on holiday, yeah? Or you'll go on holiday. He said, no, I can't do that either, because as soon as I leave the country, they'll just, people will know everywhere. And as I'm cutting his hair, and I've now got his hair wet, all pushed back. And I just said to him, what a shame. Why don't you go in disguise? And he said to me, how? And I just said, it was just completely off the cuff. I said, why don't I cut all your hair off? He said, go on then, do it. And I went, I'm looking at him in the mirror now, I'm thinking, does he realize what I just said? I said, yeah, I'm talking about cutting your hair really short. He said, go on, do it. So as you hairdressers know, the secret is, he had a proper Beatle haircut by that time. But I'm not going to start from the front and cut his hair off because he'll freak out. So I started cutting it from the back, so he wouldn't really notice, except, he still got the whole bit there, but the back was getting shorter and shorter until you come to the ears. So the hair's over the ears, and I've gone, whoop. So now you can see his ears, right? And he's not flinched. It's not like, oh, what are you doing to me? And I get, anyway, move it on, and I've cut his hair, that's short all over. But this time he's got a little sort of unshaven, a little tiny bit of a moustache. And I said, okay. He said, yeah, that's fine. Just situation. I think the reason why, I think he didn't care because he didn't have to look like a Beatle. He wasn't performing next week, so he had to look all like a Beatle. So he couldn't care. And when I left there, I said to myself, well, that's it, Les. You've become a one-cut wonder. You're never going to, cut the Beatles out again. Brian Epstein's going to see it, and then that's going to be the end of it, and that's it. I thank you very much. Again, I never told anybody, right? I had the press outside. They knew who I was. Oh, what's the latest news? Leslie? Just ignored them. I had money offered to me, to give a little stories what going on. I didn't do any of that. And about 5 weeks later, I pick up the Daily Express. It was a national newspaper, a big circulation. And it said, great big picture of Paul McCartney with Jane Asher, Mel Evans, the three of them. And it just said, Paul's come back from a wonderful safari holiday in Kenya. And when he got to the airport, obviously the press now know he went away, and one of them said to Mal Evans, "And who cut his hair? How did who did that?" And great, he said, "Oh, his barber, Leslie Cavendish." Well, that was it. That was like official. So whatever went on, I had loads of articles saying the barber that made Paul a skinhead.
Fantastic. Leslie, do you have any, did you keep any odd memorabilia? Is there something, I know when you're that close to people like that, sometimes it's not anything signed even, it's just, sometimes it's
I've got, I tell you what I never did. One of the things is I did not want to ask them for their autograph. I certainly wasn't going to keep their hair. It looked really bad if I could, if I'm sneaking around picking up hair. And
I was going to ask you, did you bring a lock of Paul's hair to your sister?
I did take one lock, which I asked for. Okay, and I'll tell you, that's another story. There's loads of them, but picking that piece of hair up and asking for his autograph, I got a great story, but we can go on forever about that one.
So I have a great idea. Why don't we do this? Let's all get the book, right? And let's get Leslie back on, because I have a feeling we're all going to take different pieces of this fantastic book and things that we're going to want to pick your brain on and talk about. But we would love to have you back again. I'm sure you have loads of stories. I'm afraid for Gino to go to London and to hang out with you, because the two of you together.
I'll take a little tour, Gino. Don't worry.
And listen, throw Andrew in the mix too, with all of his hair history that he has backgrounds wise. Forget it. I don't know. You guys
I'd like to hear your background, guys, as well.
Well, you'll wind up in that pub and never leave.
That's all right. That's all right.
And then I'll bring the press there, and I'll take pictures and say 3 famous hairdressers. Actually, Gino, you might have to write that as a joke. 3 famous hairdressers walk into an Irish pub.
A bar. Yeah, exactly.
But Leslie, it was an absolute pleasure. We've been talking about you ever since. As a matter of fact, since you and I spoke 6 months ago. But just the past few days alone, we've been a lot of chatter between.
Well, thank you.
Because,
this was really great meeting you. I hope it all goes. Whoever's going to watch this will take note, because you're 3 very experienced guys, know what you're talking about. So whoever's out there, listen and take it in.
Oh, you're going to hear a lot about this for sure, Leslie. You'll be getting a lot of hits. This was wonderful, and I think that that's a great idea, James. Let's all get the book, let's devour it, and let's get Leslie back, and we'll all have our each of our own little picks of what we want to hear about, what we want to talk about. And I've been listening to Peter Asher on Sirius on the Beatles channel, and he's almost like you, Leslie, to hear him tell the stories of how certain songs came about, and just incredible. I'm overwhelmed, and I can't thank you enough for today. My mind is blown.
Let me just explain to anybody. I hate plugging things, but there's a site called www.beatlesbookstore.com, where this guy David Bedford, who knows the Beatles. I mean, he's a historian. He's written some great books. He has a Beatles bookstore where all Beatle books that you just email him, he will sort it out, and that way I can get it signed. Right?
Fantastic.
So if you go on Amazon, you'll pay whatever you want.
Siri, make a note.
www.beatlesbookstore.com, or just email me or messenger.
www.beatlesbookstore.com.
Yeah, we'll actually put the links in the bottom for you guys to check out the Beatles bookstore and Leslie's site, so that listen, I'd love to get a signed copy of the book for sure. I mean,
I'm thinking about maybe I'd like a dozen signed, and I can start selling them here in Virginia.
You've got anybody that's Spanish, because they love it in Spain. And that's my Spanish version of it.
I love it. I love it.
That's great.
Nice.
Well, Leslie, thanks so much for spending the time.
Thank you so much indeed, guys. Listen, first of all, wish everybody out there and yourselves Happy New Year and a healthy New Year. Same to you. And
yes, sir.
We'll be next year.
Let's do it. Sounds wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Happy
everyone.
Happy Hanukkah, Leslie.